You know the sound, you know the vibe. It is the big vibe with Kevin Ty. And today, as you see, we have another special guest. We told you a few weeks ago that we'll be getting some experts in to give us guidance and educate us on topics that we need some schooling on. And today we've presented with the amazing Leslie. Not only is our friend, but he is, this guy's accolades could be spoken about for millennia. Exactly. He's our political expert. I'll hand the floor to Leslie to explain a bit of who he is, what he does, and where his interests lie. So, Les, the floor is yours.
Hey, everyone. So let me start by saying thanks to Kevin Ty for making me live my dream of being a featured artist on Spotify. This is where I want to be. I'll be dropping my solo mix soon now. Like
mixtapes,
Park is late for me. But yeah, I'm a PhD student. I'm currently at the Georgia Institute of Technology here in Atlanta, Georgia. So officially adding a third time zone to the big vibe family.
Nice one.
But my true claim to fame is I've known Tyler since we were 6 years old. So that's like
yes, sir.
22 years ago. We went to primary school together, and then we went to high school together, where we met up with the amazing, the legend that is Tev and the rest of the crew. So basically, my big honor is I've seen these boys blossom into the amazing podcast hosts you see before you today.
Sure. That's where you'll get you everywhere.
Including onto our show, apparently. I'll say that...
background dirt, I got you.
Thanks for that, Les. He's not the first. Even when we had Lisa and Katya on, they did the same thing. They just gassed us. They gassed us too much.
The hype train is real.
And I swear, if it's not like a prerequisite to joining the pod, you don't have to say nice things to us to be here. We actually invite the people on.
We have to sign those contracts.
It's a non-disclaimer as well. Okay, sick. So Les, in all his humility, also left out that he is a vastly he did say he's doing a PhD at the moment, but he's a vastly educated individual. Beyond that, he studied in started off in the UCT first, moved from UCT, studied in the UK, where Russell Brand was lucky enough to go to the same university as him. Yeah, I did it that way. So he did I think your first master's was in the UK, Les, or was that an honours?
Master's.
Masters.
No, that was a master's. So,
okay,
yeah,
and then
and then I went
came back
for a second master's in Johannesburg.
Another one.
And now I'm doing a PhD in international affairs.
Okay, so not only are we hyping Les up, we also just want to say that we don't just bring a friend on and claim he's an expert. We brought somebody in that is one of our closest friends, of course, but also that we really believe can add some real value, especially to the topics that we have on the table today. So I think maybe what we should do is we're gonna head right into it with the first section, which we call Around the World. So for those people that listened to episode 7, we spoke a little bit about Liz Truss and her. I think our Instagram focused on the fact that we were here for longer than her, but anyway, and her short tenure in office, if that's what you want to call it. Her short time in it's Downing Street, right? That's where that's their So her short, her short term there. So I think a nice place. Before we even started recording, Les did say we did a good job with that one. So we do like the compliment. But I think a nice place to start this episode will be if we can ask Leslie to, since that episode Rishi Sunak has now been brought into office. So maybe Les, if you could give us a little bit of context on him, like kind of what are your feelings about him? What is the significance of him as the current Prime Minister of the UK?
Yeah, so you guys recorded when Liz Truss said goodbye, but you stopped. Well, you didn't see that Rishi Sunak was appointed the new Prime Minister, so I'll update you a bit about him. So I saw this thing and I couldn't believe it myself, but he's the first Prime Minister who's richer than the monarch. Like, that
You was
my
balling.
mind.
I didn't know he was that rich.
He's richer than the monarch.
Jeez.
He and his wife like have over £1 billion or something. So yeah,
Investments or what?
Yeah, some business deals. I think mostly in America. I don't know what they do, but they proper balling.
Okay.
And then he's the first Prime Minister of color, brown Prime Minister. He's of Asian descent. But he is still a leader of the Conservative Party or the Tories, which kind of makes my life pretty difficult because I hate the Tories, like my own personal politics. Because I hate the Tories, I hate the Conservative Party, pro-business, pro-Brexit, like everything you would expect from a like right-wing party.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of criticism of him, like recently, to take quite a racist tone, like questioning if he's British.
Yes, I've seen that.
And obviously compared to the ultimate British Boris Johnson, like people are being very racist in their reviews of him. So yeah, I hate him, but I don't want to fall into that group, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of his credentials, do you believe that he kind of does fit the bill as a PM? Or is it a little too early to tell? You need to give him some time in office to give an honest opinion.
I guess so. I mean, I think his track record, like, proves it'll be much of the same. Like, same as Theresa May, same as Boris Johnson, same as Liz Truss. Like, anything
hopefully
Liz
longer.
Truss had against, hopefully longer. Well, yeah, maybe longer. But yeah, Liz Truss came in, took some big economic risks.
Yeah.
So he'll probably learn from that mistake and like just play things cool. But yeah.
Is he doomed to failure because of Brexit? Do you foresee that there's any kind of policy or anything that he could do that could make him actually pull this thing? Because as you heard last week, what we said was that all the most recent prime minister's biggest challenge seems to be making Brexit work. Is there anything about this guy that you think that he can make it happen, or is Brexit just, in your opinion, just something that's it's going to knock the country?
Yeah, I guess it's where your politics are. Like, to me, any right-wing conservative leader is doomed to fail. Like, Brexit's a bad idea. So anyway, it's implemented. And like, Brexit happened already. So like, what we've seen now is what Brexit is. But I think the real difference is going to be the Russia crisis and what Britain is going to do in terms of electricity bills, those prices going up. And like, I don't know enough to know if there is a good way to possibly deal with that.
Okay.
But I think whatever way you slice it, like, it's going to be a hard winter for him. It's going to be a hard few months for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. And with there being a change in PM, does that mean that it's time for a new election, like time for voting, or do you know what happens when there's a change of prime minister?
Yeah. So the British system is pretty weird because, like, the government can call an election whenever it wants to. I think Boris Johnson was the last one to call one. So they've had one like pretty recently. But the government normally calls an election either when it's doing really well and it wants to prove it can win so it can get a stronger position. And I think that's what Boris Johnson did. And there was like a big victory. Or an election could happen if the government's doing really badly and the opposition party like forces their hand. And like, at the moment, the government is doing really badly, and the Labour Party, which is the opposition party, has called for an election, but not very strongly. And like, I don't have anything to back this up, but my personal opinion is like, they don't really want to call an election now, because it's just going to be like, if the Labour Party do take power, it's just going to be a disaster. So they'd rather keep it on the sidelines, keep in the opposition for now, wait till the winters pass, wait till Brexit settled down a bit, and then see what's up next year. And like,
it's like,
I'm guessing that they're hoping the Tories just tear themselves apart.
There's so many Game of Thrones analogies that could just be thrown into this whole thing. But I think I understand. Like, you're basically saying that you think that the Labour Party wants the Conservative Party to maybe hold that L, because they don't necessarily think that they could come in with the solution anyway. So they're calling for softly calling for some sort of election, only to kind of do the political thing and say, but we did call for an election, but they don't really, again, this is Les's opinion, but they're not really looking for it. Okay. That's very interesting. Actually, that's some good context for us. But I think we'll keep our fingers on the pulse with that one. Tev, good luck, my man. It sounds like you got a lot coming your way.
We'll be putting that gas back, bro. That's all I'm saying. I think we can put a pin in that for the UK politics. Another very exciting aspect of politics is US politics. I believe that there's an election coming up. I think it's the 8th of November. So when chatting a bit more about US politics, could you give us some insight on how that looks? Maybe kind of how power is divided in the US, if that's a starting point.
Yeah. So for those of your listeners who aren't familiar, the US system's a bit, well, it's not unique, but it's a bit different from what we used to. So it's a federal system, which means you got a federal government, and then you got 50 states, and each of those states have their own government. So kind of like in South Africa, we've got the national government and then the provincial governments, except it's very different here in the US because the state governments have a lot of power to make their own laws, to pass their own budgets, to do all these things. And in July, there was big news from the Supreme Court when they overturned Roe v. Wade and moved reproductive rights from being a federal issue to a state issue, which obviously gives the state governments even more power. And then just quickly, at the federal level, you got the presidency, and then the two houses of Congress, which are the Senate and the House of Representatives. And if you're a political party, either the Democrats or the Republicans, you ideally want to control all three of those things, the presidency, Senate, and the House of Representatives. And currently the Democrats do, but by like super thin margins.
Okay. And I'm assuming the aim is to control those three things, because to make any kind of decisions, you need all three. It's like a majority vote kind of thing, right? Like within those three, two of the three have to agree.
Exactly. Yeah. Like each of those things can pass laws, but there's certain rules. And then if the Senate passes a law, the House can veto it, or like things like that. So to have control of making laws, you need to have power in all three.
Okay. So then maybe what you can do, so now we have like a basic understanding of what how US power is divided, but can you maybe explain to us like a little bit about like what are these midterm elections? Like what's the purpose of them? Why are they coming up? What are the people voting for? Like kind of how does that look?
So as we all know, the president's term in office is 4 years. But a senator has a term of 6 years, and then a congressman in the House of Representatives has a term of 2 years. So you have to have elections every 2 years. And the midterms are what we call the elections between the president's term.
Basically, give us they're voting now, right? You're saying it's kind of like in the middle. What's the significance of this election?
Right. So the midterms are important because they give us a sense of how the people feel about the president's first 2 years. And they also obviously, like, because we vote for senators, because we vote for representatives, like, the power in those two houses can change, which means they tell us how much power the president will have to pass legislation in his or her final 2 years of the term. And these elections are particularly important because they're the first elections we've had since the chaos that was caused by the 2020 election. And as I've spoken about, it's the first election since Roe v. Wade was overturned. So the state politics becomes more important now.
Okay. And generally when there's elections, we always hear about like swing votes or swing states. So is that also something that is a contributing factor in this election? And if so, which are the kind of states that people need to watch out for?
Yeah. So the first thing you should know is all the predictions say that the Democrats are going to lose control of the House of Representatives. This is pretty normal in a midterm, that the opposition party gains control of the House, but obviously it's still bad news. So, like, all the focus now is on the Senate because we aren't voting for the president. It's all about the Senate now. And currently the Democrats only control the Senate by one vote. So there's huge pressure there. And there are three states that we should be paying attention to. Okay. The first is Pennsylvania, where the race is between John Fetterman, who's a Democratic candidate, and Mehmet Oz, or Dr. Oz, as he is more commonly
ominous.
You may have heard. Yes, a TV star again is running as a Republican candidate and
Gotta love it.
win a political seat. Okay. So Pennsylvania with Dr. Oz is something we should pay attention to. A very close one is also Nevada, where they currently have a Democratic senator, but it looks likely that she will lose her seat. And I can't remember her name, I'm afraid. But she might lose her seat. And the third important race is here, where I am in Georgia, between Raphael Warnock, Reverend Raphael Warnock, who's the current sitting Democratic senator, and then a challenger by the name of Herschel Walker. And that's currently a toss-up as well. So whichever party wins like two of those seats kind of gains control of the Senate, which is a huge deal.
Okay. And obviously you, as you said to us in the beginning of the episode, for those people that didn't pick up, you live in Georgia. So, it doesn't get much closer than somebody who is as interested in politics and studying in that state as you right now. So maybe what you can do for us is just kind of, let's dive a little bit deeper into the significance of this vote in Georgia. Like, I think what's nice about this kind of conversation is it gives outsiders, we always think of America or US, or we always painted this picture of how the US is like the picture of democracy, or, you look at like House of Cards and shows like that. So maybe you can paint us a picture of like maybe the significance of Georgia, and maybe dive in a little bit deeper about Herschel Walker and is it Reverend Raphael Warnock? Just give us some context on that.
Yeah, so I promise I'm not saying this because I'm here, but Georgia is extremely important. And the reason why it's important is because it's a southern state, which means you would expect it to vote Republican, which it usually does. But it also has a huge black population, which, as we know, generally votes Democrat. Georgia is important because it voted for Trump in 2016, but then it's one of the very few states that switched to Biden in 2020. And that was because of a really huge historic mobilization of Black voters led by this amazing grassroots organizer named Stacey Abrams. And remember that name. The second reason Georgia is important is because they currently have two Democratic senators, including Reverend Raphael Warnock, which is very unusual for Georgia. So you can kind of say that it's thanks to Georgia that the Democrats have control of the presidency and the Senate. In terms of the race this year, it's between Reverend Raphael Warnock, who's this amazing, dynamic, young Black man. He was a preacher at the Ebenezer Baptist Church here in Atlanta, which is actually where Martin Luther King Jr. Grew up, and his father and himself preached there. So it's got huge historical significance. And like in politics, Warnock has done some amazing work at promoting Georgia, promoting the interests of the Black community. His opponent, Herschel Walker, was a football star. He played here in Georgia and then a bit in the but he's a huge Trump supporter and friend of Trump, which, as you would expect, means he doesn't have much experience in politics. But he's emerged as this like problematic, pro-police, pro-conservative values, anti-abortion, all the things that you would expect from a Trump friend. But he's had numerous scandals in the past few weeks, including domestic violence, allegations, and it's come out that he's had two women he was having affairs with get abortions. So people have pointed out a bit of irony there. But considering the CVs of these two men, like, you would wonder how it's so close. And I'm still wondering that too, but it really is close, and it could be Herschel Walker who wins this election, which is pretty scary. So definitely keep an eye on the race between Walker and Warnock. That's going to be a hugely important election that we see on the 8th of November. On the state side, we have a race for the state governor, which is kind of like the president of Georgia, sort of. And the current governor is Brian Kemp, who is Republican, very conservative, but not radical like Trump, but very pro-business, very anti-abortion, he's done a lot at suppressing voting right here in Georgia. And he's running against a woman by the name of Stacey Abrams, who you might remember from earlier was kind of responsible for getting Black voters to vote for Biden in 2020. And she's exciting. She's young. She's amazing. I actually saw her a few days ago on my university campus. And obviously she's going to bring a lot of good, but it looks likely at this stage that she's going to lose and Brian Kemp's going to win. The state governor race is important because abortion is very much on the table. And Georgia hasn't banned abortion yet, but everyone thinks that Brian Kemp's just waiting to win the election until that happens, which is a very realistic possibility.
Wow.
Geez, yeah, and I'm curious, as someone that isn't in the States, what is the promotion for each of these political figures? Like, do you get kind of snowed in by how much promotion they're getting on TV, or radio, maybe social media? What are the kind of the outlets that you see a lot of these promos being run on in order to try and get votes?
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. Like, before I came here, I knew political advertising was bad, but I've never even thought it would be anything like it's been. Everything, every time you open YouTube, every time you open Instagram, every time you switch on the TV, you're just bombarded with these political adverts. And I think that's what explains why this race between Warnock and Walker is so close. It's overwhelming. Like every time you see social media, it's always Raphael Warnock is trying to increase your taxes. He's bringing inflation to the state of Georgia. And it's just like, it's not convincing, but you hear it so much and it just sounds so scary and it plays with your psyche in some weird way that it's just, I mean, like, I definitely have a better understanding of why these races are so close, having been here. But yeah, it's going to get worse and worse and more in your face, like, as we get to this final week of the campaign.
Okay. And maybe another kind of segue, or last question that we can do kind of for this section is, obviously those that are paying attention to it will know that Elon Musk has now officially taken over at Twitter. I know there was a little bit of a back and forth. It almost felt inevitable when he first put his bid in. There was all this news about him trying to pull out of the bid. And then, yeah, there was just a whole bunch of stuff. But I think now it's official. And you're saying now that the social media and all these campaigns are playing a big part. Do you think something like this will have an effect at all? And if so, what kind of effect would you predict?
Yeah, so our South African friend buying the biggest social media site in the world, like, it's definitely big news. It's huge news. I don't think it'll have an effect on this coming election just because it's so soon. But yeah, he's fired the CEO, fired the CFO, fired the technical director who was in charge of banning Trump and all those guys after the 2020 problems. So he's definitely going to make some changes. He's going to probably bring Trump back. Like I said, probably won't have an effect on this election, but definitely going forward, like, to have Trump's hate and misinformation and all those things back in our social media platforms is going to be bad news.
He's a handful.
Even Musk having control of Twitter is bad news because he has such a clear personal and business related agenda that to have him calling the shots in this tool that's supposed to be neutral and free and fair and all these things, it's going to be interesting.
Genius. Oof. Well, that's a lot to digest. I think this session has been incredible. I mean, there's been so much insight. There's been given a lot of pointers that Leslie's advised us on, and it's really something that we're going to be keeping our eyes close to. Yeah, really informative. I've loved hearing about kind of the divisions in US politics and getting real world know-how about it has been such a great experience. So that's where we're going to wrap up this section of our podcast. If you are leaving us, don't forget to like, subscribe. You can interact with us on Instagram, TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and don't forget our website where you can find our links to everything.
Yes, sir.
And so that's it for section 1. We'll be heading into section 2 of our podcast.